I love the energy in this room for a gorgeous Thursday, last day of April here in St. Paul. Welcome to all of you for the launch of the 2026 Minnesota Energy Factsheet. Thanks to all of you for attending, both here in person at Wilder Foundation, as well as to those joining us online. My name is Greg Mast, and I am the Executive Director of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, or SEEM as we're known. For the past 10 years, SEEM has been putting rigorous and credible data into the hands of businesses, policymakers, and leaders in our communities to track and inform the transformation of Minnesota's energy system. This year, we're proud to celebrate a decade of that work, and today's Minnesota Energy Factsheet launch is a great reminder of why it matters. The data in this year's factsheet tells a compelling story. Energy efficiency and clean energy businesses are not on the periphery of Minnesota's economy. They are core to the foundation and are a driving force helping to power our state's progress. These are real companies, real jobs, real investments that are providing economic activity, and that is happening across our state, in every region, and across every sector. When we document that growth in detail and transparently year over year, we give decision makers something powerful, and that's evidence. Evidence that the energy transition is well underway, that it's diversifying our energy system, creating opportunities, and that smart policy and private investment can further accelerate that growth. And that's why this fact sheet matters. Not as a celebration of what we hope will happen, but as a clear-eyed look at what is already happening. And I also want to acknowledge SEEM's collaborators who make the quality of this report possible. The Minnesota Department of Commerce, your partnership and data are indispensable. And SEEM is also grateful for your work as part of the Minnesota Energy Alley Initiative, a public-private partnership between SEEM, Nina Axelson, who runs Grid Catalyst, and the department, who over the past year helped to support 5 innovative startup companies who are delivering solutions that save energy costs for businesses and consumers while also modernizing our energy system. Bloomberg NEF, your analytical depth and global perspective elevate everything that we publish. And to Lisa Jacobson and the entire team at the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, thank you for your decade of partnership, for your friendship, and this important work in helping to connect it to the broader national energy and policy discussions. We're also deeply grateful to our fact sheet sponsors, Full Stack St. Paul and the City of St. Paul, wonderful partners whose work at the intersection of technology and community is in direct alignment with where the clean energy economy is heading. And thank you to Marsh & McLennan Agency for their continued commitment and contributions to this work. And a heartfelt thank you to the McKnight Foundation, whose long-standing investment in a more sustainable and equitable Minnesota and Midwest has been foundational to so much of what SEEM does. And also a big thank you to the Wilder Foundation for once again being wonderful and gracious hosts for our launch event. And I just want to also shout out a very special thank you to SEEM's Board of Directors. A few of them are participating in today's program, as well as to my team and just all of you for joining us, because you as leaders, all of your contributions are what is reflected in the data that we're going to be discussing and sharing today. So your work every single day matters, and I thank you for that. So in closing, we're proud to share this year's fact sheet with all of you. I hope that you will dig into the data, share it widely, and use it to make the case in your businesses, your communities, and the halls of government that Minnesota continues to be a leader at the forefront of the energy transition, and that we will continue to be a beacon that shows what, again, clean energy can mean in delivering economic opportunity, development, and ultimately energy independence and that security that we all care about. And most importantly, I think certainly as we're all operating in this space right now, it keeps energy affordable and it's clean, and we know that that reliability matters now more than ever. So I appreciate that. And I am now going to turn it over to Assistant Mayor of the City of St. Paul, Nick Stumo-Langer, to share some words. So please help me in welcoming the Assistant Mayor.
Well, thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. And thank you all for being here today. My name is Nick Stumo-Langer. I'm an assistant mayor for housing, economic vibrancy, and infrastructure here at the City of St. Paul. And City of St. Paul is extremely excited to be here with SEAM and highlighting the great work that you all are doing to bring clean energy to the state of Minnesota and making sure that people know about it. We are working through our full stack initiative, as Greg mentioned, and hit the nail right on the head, leveraging technology and innovation to make sure we have good, sustainable jobs for our residents, and turning that into innovative technologies is kind of key. The work that I have, the departments that I oversee in the city of St. Paul contains the bulk of our climate and resiliency work. And the thing that I love about the way that the city does it is that it's integrated into the day-to-day work that our staff are doing. It's integrated into everything that they're considering. So it's our buildings, it's our parks, it's our fleet technologies, it's everything that we could think of. And Mayor Herr has really ambitious climate goals. The track that St. Paul has been laying and we want to continue going down will be updated in our climate and resiliency plan that will be coming out pretty soon. And we know that the only way that we will be able to achieve these goals is in partnership. And we also know that we need solutions from innovators like everyone in this room, folks online and everywhere across Minnesota, and a lot of the new companies and technologies that we hope to bring here to St. Paul. These clean energy companies are providing this vital role in the economy that we have here in St. Paul, driving down costs, providing these great jobs, and meeting the sustainability goals we have, and will help us make our communities more resilient as well. Just a couple of the different things that we have here in St. Paul is that we are making great strides to bring all of our municipal buildings carbon neutral by 2030. We're leading on really innovative geothermal projects at Como Zoo and a bunch of other projects across the city. And we also want to celebrate huge wins such as Flow Environmental, the demonstration they have at the Steam Fitters and Pipe Fitters Training Center up right off of 35 by the old Kmart site, led in part by Grid Catalyst and the Minnesota Energy Alley team. And for a lot of the updates on this work kind of on an ongoing basis, we have our climate action dashboard that you can look at, and I'm going to read a URL, which is always fun to do that. So climateaction.stpaul.gov. So that's what I have on the sheet. And then you can learn more about the work that we are doing in innovation at fullstackstpaul.com. And in closing, and when I turn it over to Grant, I just want to note that the work of our city staff and the work that they do every single day to ensure that the technology companies and the innovative work that's happening across what you all are doing, what Clean Energy Economy Minnesota is doing, is really crucial. And so I just want to thank our city staff for everything that they do. Mary Rick, in particular, from Full Stack, has been a great partner, and especially bringing in a new administration, getting folks up to speed. We've been able to hit the ground running in this area because of the really, really excellent work that they have done. And so I just want to thank them and thank you all for the continued partnership. So happy to turn it over to Grant Hirschberger from Marsh & McLennan Agency. Grant is a strong leader with a background in results-driven business insurance and mitigating risk of our world. So I'll turn it over to Grant. Thank you for being here.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. Who's ready to talk about some business insurance? No, I'll keep that for later conversations. But it really is an honor to speak with you today as we unveil the 2026 Minnesota Energy Factsheet and discuss the future of clean energy in Minnesota, which is a future I believe is full of promise. The other night, I was playing what my nearly 3-year-old son likes to call bonk soccer, which is exactly what it sounds like. You run around and bonk into each other. But I started thinking about the future and the future that I'm going to leave for my sons and the future that they will leave for their children. And I started thinking about the steps that we are taking now and how the actions that we take will help shape the environment that our children inherit. I started thinking, am I leaving my sons a world full of problems or a world full of opportunities? Our state stands at a pivotal moment. The energy landscape is evolving rapidly, driven by innovation, community development, and a shared vision for a cleaner, more resilient Minnesota. Our path forward will have its challenges, shifting policies, market fluctuations, and economic pressures, but our progress in clean energy is a testament to the strength and adaptability of Minnesota's people and our industries. Clean energy resiliency means more than just reliable power. It means building an energy system that can withstand disruptions and support economic growth and deliver benefits equitably across all communities. The reach of Minnesota's investments in clean energy extends far past emission reduction. They're creating good jobs and strengthening local economies and enhancing our energy independence. Even as legislative landscapes shift, the momentum behind clean energy continues. Businesses are innovating, and consumers are embracing solar, geothermal, and other renewables. This momentum is a powerful force that transcends the uncertainty. So allow me to state the obvious here. The job is not done yet. But this event is an opportunity for us to look back on the progress that we have made, to adjust for the future, and to carry on. Thank you to the dedication and work done by Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, the McKnight Foundation, and the rest of the organizations that are here today and supporting virtually. Minnesota's commitment to clean energy is unwavering. Our collective efforts are building a stronger, cleaner, and more prosperous future for all Minnesotans. Let's continue to embrace this opportunity with optimism and determination as we build an environment we can be proud to leave behind. Next, I will hand it to Pete Wyckoff, the Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Commerce, where he leads the Energy Resources Division. With a distinguished background in both federal and state energy work, Deputy Commissioner Wyckoff plays a pivotal role in shaping a reliable and affordable energy future for all Minnesotans. Thank you.
I just want to say happy 10th anniversary to Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. I think I have been involved in most of these annual events. Greg used to come out to Washington, D.C., and I would host the Minnesota delegation briefing every year. And I've been back here in Minnesota for a while now, and this is the fourth time I've been here to celebrate with good friends from DC and good friends from Minnesota. 2025 was a tough year for clean energy policy in the United States. I know we are all concerned with what that will mean for our industry going forward. I also know there's a disconnect. We are all, probably wisely, and dutifully focused on the business and affordability cases for clean energy, and they are very strong. And the word climate has all but disappeared from our discourse overnight. But as a friend reminded me last week, physics is an unrelenting beast. It does not care about our delicate sensibilities. Greenhouse gas emissions from burning coal, oil, gasoline, and natural gas continue to lock in dangerous climate change, whether we want to talk about it or not. Before turning to the 2026 Minnesota Energy Factsheet numbers, I want to give a bit of a broader context from the Ember 2026 Global Electricity Review released just last week. There is tremendous good news if you take a global perspective. There's tremendous good news if we stop paying attention to Washington. Globally, clean energy is cleaning up. Last year, renewable energy overtook coal power for the first time in over 100 years and now makes up over a third of the global electric mix. Globally, solar, wind, and nuclear all grew last year. Solar showed an absolutely astronomical growth of 636 billion kilowatt hours, 33% higher than the previous record, which had been set the previous year, bringing the global total to 3.4 trillion kilowatt hours, and solar alone met 75% of global new electric demand last year. This morning I was trying to get my head around what that means and how to put it in context. That is about enough solar electricity to count for my annual home Excel electric use and for 600 million of my identical friends. Yes, I'm proposing Wyckoff Excel bills as a new unit for measuring electric use in a relatable manner. Solar and wind last year together met 99% of all new electric demand globally. Globally, fossil energy generation fell, including coal. The percentage of global electrical generation from natural gas fell for the 5th year in a row, planet-wide. Those numbers are gobsmacking. And that was before the war in the Middle East closed the Strait of Hormuz, driving global prices of oil and natural gas through the roof, and I'm sure accelerating the global clean electricity transition. On the transportation side, EVs were 25% of global production of new cars last year. 25%. This is up from 1% in 2016. Globally, the absolute number of new gas-powered cars produced peaked 9 years ago and have been crashing ever since. Just looking around the United States does not give you a picture of what's happening in the world. The world is not arguing, it is transitioning. Minnesota is not arguing, we are transitioning. It is only Washington, D.C. that is arguing against the clean energy transition. Washington is wrong. Washington is backing inflationary retrograde energy policy in a desperate attempt to turn back the tide of fossil fuel decline. In the 17th century, Don Quixote defined pointless, misguided crusades by tilting at windmills. In the 21st century, Donald Trump tilts at windmills. What is happening in Minnesota? We don't tilt at windmills. We will erect wind turbines, and more recently, solar panels, and we dig geothermal wells. We have cutting-edge clean electricity and energy efficiency standards, and they are making the difference. In the past 5 years, according to the fact sheet, renewables accounted for 98% of all electric capacity added in the state. In 2025, we set a new record for EV registration. In 2025, Commerce, the PUC, and others worked with Xcel Energy to develop and approve an integrated resource plan that is starting to see all the way to 2040 and 100% clean electricity. It involves a tremendous clean power build-out. Also in 2025, new state-level energy permitting reforms took effect to help speed that build-out. And in 2025, the Minnesota legislature adopted data center legislation that has attracted our first 2 hyperscale data center proposals. Because we foreground clean energy in that policy, the proposed data centers come with gigawatts of proposed additional clean energy investment, including what would be the world's largest long-duration storage battery. Let's be clear, the current administration is driving up the cost of energy, including clean energy. They are doing this through every trick they can think of, both legal and patently illegal. But Minnesota is not deterred. We know what the world knows. The road to affordability is built on clean energy. Onward, and I look forward to a great panel. So thank you.
Well, good morning. Excellent opening comments from everybody. I will share a little bit of a national view, but I think the most important things that were said, I want to pick up a couple things that Greg said. He talked about evidence. We're not just talking about aspiration. We are talking about actual on the ground build and jobs and economic development for communities. And we're not holding back as a country, even despite all the headwinds that you all know too well. For those that do not know me, my name is Lisa Jacobson. I'm the president of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, and it's been a privilege to work with all of you over the last decade to track Minnesota's leadership in the energy sector. It's also been my honor to get to know Greg Mast and his team, and for my team over the years to collaborate and learn from the excellent work that Clean Energy Economy Minnesota does. I'm going to take about 10 minutes, and I have a number of slides here. I'm probably not going to go through all of them, but I assure that they would be made publicly available to you. But I want to kind of pick and choose a little bit from what I heard from the opening speakers. But The council is very much like SEAM. We are a multi-industry energy trade association. We were founded in the early 1990s, all about the opportunity for our American economy to use clean and efficient energy resources. So our mission as an organization is a thriving, competitive U.S. economy, which we believe is founded on affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. We have a number of sponsors for the national project, including McKnight Foundation, so I definitely want to call them out. And the Minnesota Energy Factsheet goes back, as Greg said, for many years, because around our leadership table, we could see there were a few states that had that vision and commitment to sound, practical implementing energy policies, and Minnesota was a leader. We also know that Minnesota is home to headquarters of many innovative U.S. companies, and this really is a place to do business. So let's talk about what we saw in 2025. And I would note just about the fact book as a whole, it looks at energy comprehensively. It tries to be up to date, in particular about technology cost and deployment. And we focus in on, as I said, the full portfolio of U.S. energy technologies, but we like to zero in on technologies that may be small today, but are poised for significant growth, whether that be sustainable fuels like sustainable aviation fuels, or innovations in buildings, storage. You'll see important data there. And I have seen this proven out. When we started, when we talk about EVs or we talk about any number of other technologies, they were just very small little increments, and now they really tell a big story when it comes to the U.S. energy landscape. So despite a tumultuous year, it's remarkable to see the resilience of clean energy. And so here, this is one of the data sets where we get an opportunity to take a longer view. We're really going back 2 decades. And this is showing you what the U.S. is building from the power sector perspective. If you go back to the early 2000s, you see the story of natural gas build out, really represented here in the gray. And then as we move into the second decade of the century, you start to see that color band expand. We start to see blue, which is wind being built. We see some yellow, which is solar. And we see little mixes here of nuclear or biomass. But what the big story is for the last decade has been the dominance of renewable energy build. And in the last several years, we see a new color, and that's pink. Can anyone guess what that is? Energy storage. So when we look at last year, record-breaking year of expansion and build in the energy sector, in the power sector, and you see this increased diversity. And I think that's really healthy. But over 90% of what we built around the country last year was solar and storage. The other big story of 2025 is affordability and impacts on prices for electricity bills and just the cost of energy overall. So we are seeing costs go up, and this is a big concern. I think my answer to this, though, isn't, as Pete said, like a retrograde view. It's actually, let's lean in on to what is the cheapest, most affordable energy resources we have. And those are renewables and energy efficiency. Let's start there. Let's optimize the grid and the system we have. And then when we think about strategic build out, let's think about the importance of diversity in our energy portfolio, but let's not push aside what has now become the cheapest forms of energy. And I'll get to that in a moment. Our energy mix. Demand has gone up, and I'm going to show you a chart in a moment which drills down on data center demand growth. But overall, last year, our consumption of energy went up, and every sector grew. And unfortunately, that meant that coal went up too. And unfortunately, our greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions went up. But I think what gave me a lot of good view on this was that we saw for the first time, record-breaking output from renewable energy and the largest proportion of renewable energy in our mix. What we don't see here is energy efficiency. And we have some really good data in the fact book on energy efficiency. And my favorite slide there is our energy productivity trends. That means how much energy are we using to support our economic growth? We had strong economic growth in 2025, but really importantly, we did not need to match metric by metric energy use for energy growth. Our energy productivity improved, which means that we needed less energy to power our economy proportionally. And this is not a new trend. This has been going on since the early 1990s. I mean, phenomenal energy productivity gains over that period of time. So energy efficiency, demand solutions, plus strategic supply side solutions means that we can meet energy demand in the coming years, and we can do it affordably and reliably. I mentioned data centers. Everyone's talking about AI and data centers and the strategic imperative that our nation finds ourselves in. We were not sure when we did the fact book last year, a lot of conversation, but would it really show up? Yes, it did show up. Data center energy demand is happening. You know, we heard about what's going on in Minnesota already. So this just gives you a snapshot of different parts of the country. But when you see these forward-looking charts, while there is skepticism of exactly where and how much, I think there's little disagreement that we are going to continue to see an upward trend. And why is that important? It's very different than the last 2 decades of flat energy growth that we've had as a nation. And our institutions, our communities, the private sector are not geared up to move at pace in the way that we need to. So we need to all work together, like Minnesota has, to build that policy framework, to drive investment signals to the private sector, and to work with our communities to see how they can benefit from this very significant change in our energy economy. EVs were mentioned in Minnesota, you know, your leader. I mean, we could just tick through a lot of these stats and say, well, Minnesota is, blew it out of the water nationally. And I know we're going to hear that from Kathy. So EVs, we've been on pace, strong federal incentives coupled with state incentives, and we have seen electric vehicle adoption go up. But after the tax credit expiration in the end of the first quarter of this year, we started to see that cliff down. So, I want to highlight that, but I also agree with Pete that, we are in a transformational period here. I think I'm going to close with one last slide, which talks about the private sector, because I think most of the other things I have covered. But again, all of these will be available to you. 2 things about this slide. Number one, this shows investment across the energy sector in the United States. We still are second to China in our investment overall in clean energy or energy transition investment. But we continued, even though we had tremendous uncertainty. I mean, and some of the slides previous talked about trade policies, a lot of volatility there, over 187 different trade measures impacting the energy sector last year. We had policy changes in the tax code, a lot of uncertainty for all the sectors, where to put our money at this time, and what will pricing be like, not even to mention the recent events with the war in the Middle East. But what you see here is steady state, diverse set of investments in the energy transition in the United States and a record-breaking year of investment. And for me, another thing I would highlight is this area in pink, which in this case is not storage. This represents power grids, which makes sense because, as I said before, our consumption went up as a country, and we need a lot more electrical equipment to support all types of energy resources. But I also see it as an optimization investment. A lot of those investments are on new technologies that will help us use the grid, manage energy better for all customers. So I think that's a really important evolution in this story. So I really look forward to drilling down into the Minnesota data. Again, it's an honor to work with all of you and just keep leading and show the way for us all around the country. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I have the great privilege of sharing some of the data from this year's fact sheet. But first, I have a nice video for you. So.
Minnesota Energy Factsheet showcases Minnesota's continued leadership in energy efficiency, clean power, and innovation. For the 6th year in a row, zero carbon sources supplied the majority of Minnesota's electricity. In 2025, 55% of the state's power came from renewable and nuclear energy, outpacing the national average of 43%. Proof that a clean grid is not just possible, it's already here. Renewables accounted for 98% of all new power capacity added over the last 5 years. In 2025 alone, Minnesota added 264 megawatts of new solar capacity. Over the past decade, coal has dropped from 39% of Minnesota's energy mix to just 24%, a sign of how dramatically the state's grid is transforming. Clean transportation is accelerating too. In 2025, Minnesota set a new record for annual EV registrations, and the state now nears 100,000 total electric vehicles registered as of January 2026. The state is boosting energy independence, cutting electricity imports from 9% to 7% from 2024 to 2025. Energy productivity is up 38% since 2001, including an 8% gain in the last 5 years. Minnesota ranked 11th in the nation for overall energy efficiency and remains the top-ranked state in the Midwest. That progress is saving money and boosting affordability. Minnesota's Energy Conservation and Optimization Program generated enough energy savings in 2022 and 2023 to heat, cool, and power more than 147,000 homes for an entire year. Our state is laying the groundwork for next-generation solutions like sustainable aviation fuel. As national SAF production surged 111% year over year in 2025, Minnesota is positioning itself as a global leader in decarbonizing air travel. Minnesota's clean energy leadership is delivering results, creating jobs, bolstering resilience, and driving statewide economic growth. Get all the facts about Minnesota's energy landscape and where it's headed by downloading the 2026 Minnesota Energy Factsheet today.
Awesome. So we've already heard quite a few facts, obviously, on the national level and even the global level. We've also heard some of the amazing things that are happening here right in the city of St. Paul. So it's pretty clear that clean energy deployment in Minnesota and beyond is continuing to advance despite all of the federal uncertainty and rollbacks. I have the great pleasure of sharing some more of those facts that we've been talking about, and some of them probably you've already heard, but we hope that by saying them multiple times that they really sink in, that you can see some of the great work that we're doing. And I will just do a quick shout out. On your table, we have the infographics. So if you still need more facts, you can look on that sheet. And then if you want the full report, we have some of those at the table where you picked up your name tags. So with that, we're going to start with energy independence. The state continues to boost its energy independence. Imported electricity made up just 7% of consumption in 2025, down from 9% the year before. Minnesota used 65.7 terawatt hours of electricity and only imported 4.7 terawatt hours. In 2025, Minnesota consumer electric rates averaged 12.67 cents per kilowatt hour, up 2.6% from 2.35 cents per kilowatt hour in 2024, and up 27% since 2016 in nominal terms. Minnesota's average electricity prices today are below the U.S. average of 13.63 cents per kilowatt hour, which is up 5.3% from 2024 in nominal terms. So we're doing better than the national rate, although obviously still increasing. For the sixth year in a row, zero carbon sources supply the majority of Minnesota's electricity. In 2025, 55% of the state's power came from renewable and nuclear energy, outpacing the national average of 43%. Renewables continue to lead Minnesota's electricity generation mix, with natural gas generation decreasing and coal-fired generation increasing over the past year. In the last 10 years, renewables accounted for 84% of all new capacity, and in the past 5 years, renewables accounted for 98% of all new capacity. In the last 10 years, coal has gone from 39% down to 24%. And as Lisa and some others have kind of mentioned, we're guessing or seeing with last year's increases, there's a lot of weather changes, extremes, highs and lows, and also just the general demand. Minnesota's power sector emissions remain steady from 2024 to 2025, maintaining the state's lowest recorded emissions. As of 2025, Minnesota reduced emissions by 48% relative to 2005 levels, compared to a 38% reduction nationally. Minnesota has shown a consistent upward trend in energy productivity. The state has seen a 38% boost in energy productivity since 2001 and an 8% increase in the last 5 years. According to the most recent data available through the Minnesota Department of Commerce, Minnesota's Energy Conservation and Optimization Program, often known as ECO, generated enough energy savings in 2022 and 2023 to heat, cool, and power more than 147,000 homes for an entire year. Minnesota can close 2025 with 63 megawatts of live data center capacity, which is up more than 31% from its 48 megawatt footprint in 2016, while the state has another 397 megawatts currently committed or under construction. This remains modest compared to the national pipeline of approximately 48 gigawatts. So notice the megawatts versus the gigawatts. Preliminary data shows Minnesota added 264 megawatts of solar capacity in 2025 and 29 megawatts of new natural gas generation. And then lastly, Minnesota set a new record for annual EV registrations in 2025 and now nears 100,000 total EV registrations as of January 1, 2026. So there were 15,824 new BEV registrations, a 7.2% increase since 2024. New PHEV registrations increased 3% to 5,884 in 2025 from 5,711 in 2024. So Minnesotans are registering EVs at a rate vastly higher than just a decade ago, with less than 100 PEV and PHEV registrations in 2016. And that is a whole lot of data, which may or may not mean something to you. So we have created a full panel of folks to tell you about their on-the-ground experience. So I will welcome our industry leaders to the table here.
Kathy, how much time do we have? Probably should have done that homework. 20 minutes? Okay. Is that with questions or without? Without 20 minutes. All right, good deal. Hi, everybody. My name is Tina Munson. I'm with US Solar, and today I have the distinct pleasure to moderate this panel. With 20 minutes, I think I'll do just a quick intro of everyone here, and then we'll kind of jump into some of the questions I have. We have Alex Cutchy with Geronimo Power. We have Luke Galswick with Evergreen Energy, I guess technically, and Holly Hassan with St. Paul Port Authority, and Marty Morrood with True North Solar. What you have sort of here today is you have a little bit of a split. You have some renewable kind of energy developers in many ways between Marty, Alex, and myself. And then you also have two people here on the built environment with Luke and Holly, which is very interesting. And we'll sort of talk a little bit about the differences in terms of impacts that we see across both those general categories. I think what we've seen earlier today, and when you look at the fact sheet, is that Minnesota has really remained steady in its clean energy commitment to the transition in jobs. in 2025, even though, as we all know, it was a pretty brutal year. I think it's impressive and it speaks to the industry's resiliency that what we've seen here in Minnesota. But it also speaks to the importance of state policies and to a friendly regulatory environment, for example. I think what we also have seen is that we all have been impacted differently, not only in the solar sector itself, but also across the renewable energy industry as well as the built environment. And US Solar is a DG developer. So when we have a 4 or 5 year runway, but our projects only take, say, 2 years for development, that runway is significantly viewed differently, right? That allows us to not only get through our pipeline that we already have existing, potentially build new pipeline and still hold the ITC. That is not necessarily true for the utility scale world, where development timelines can be as long as 7 to 10 years. And so I want to turn to Alex and ask a little bit about what we've seen from these utility scale developers. Many of them have turned to do data center either support or development directly. And so, Alex, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Geronimo Power's plans around the data center development, and sort of how does it set itself apart, or has its strategy different than potentially other competitors?
Sure. Thanks, Tina. So my name's Alex Cutchy with Geronimo Power. We are a renewable developer. We've been operating in Minnesota for nearly 20 years. And during that time, we've also scaled and grown wind, solar, and storage. We're really proud of that. We had one of the first projects in the country to compete with and beat natural gas on price in a solar project. And that was selected in Minnesota by the administrative law judge and approved by the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. Over time, we've invested $315 million in Minnesota and then other places as well in solar, wind, storage. But what's exciting about now is the data center growth, and that allows us to lean into that investment in a more meaningful way. When you're hearing about data centers, I think you're really hearing about people are either land banking or developing. What's unique to us is being a renewable developer first. We learned that our customers over time started to change. We would work with utilities, and then we started getting interest from companies that had clean energy goals, the Walmarts, the Amazons. They were buying renewable energy credits. And we saw that about 10 years ago. And then a couple of years ago, we made a meaningful move into the area of data center development. And that allowed us, as a renewable developer, to pair new renewables with data center development sites and ensure that we could really accelerate the transition that we are seeing in the clean energy economy in Minnesota. When you align the policy framework with the business incentives that the businesses want, that creates a wonderful environment for growth. So we've moved now from 315 million that we've invested in Minnesota to projecting, if we get this right, 6.2 billion by the end of 2030. That allows us to accelerate because a project where we are looking at 400 megawatts of load, we can pair it with 1.5 gigawatts of new clean energy generation. And that is something that we're really excited about to accelerate that transition to a clean energy economy for Minnesota.
Excellent. $6 billion is a lot. Is there anything that you're sort of seeing in the state of Minnesota from a regulatory or policy environment that you would specifically like to highlight, and maybe tell the crowd a little bit about your Nobles County project?
We're also, we've got a project down in Nobles County, and that's a $4 billion project. What we see in Minnesota is we understand Minnesota. We love Minnesota. When you're looking at the data center growth that we are seeing as a state, it is very, very modest. A lot of that is because people are conflicting the land banking or the development with what's actually getting built. What we are doing, and that we've taken from our experience of developing energy projects across the state that we're incorporating into our communities, is having a lot of conversations to see what the community actually wants, what it needs, what's important to it. That requires a lot of conversations, and that's something that we're willing to go through and engage in that work to figure out what a community wants and what its concerns are. And sometimes the communities want us to look at different sites, and where we're initially thinking is not something that the community is looking at, and another place within the county or another neighboring community is welcoming us in. So we definitely want to put in all that work up front. We want to be transparent in the conversations that we're having. We want to identify community concerns. These are all things that we've learned in building projects. And when you're looking at something like a data center, to us, it's not a building, it's part of a larger ecosystem. And how do you align that with the generation? How do you align that with the community needs? How do you align that with being able to fund a number of things within the community? How can you talk and dispel some of the myths about these projects, and then also identify what's really a valid concern for the community so you can design around it? That's stuff that we want to take into all of our approach, and that's what we're learning in our conversations when we are putting in that hard work, having those conversations, and doing things differently than some of our competitors.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. It's definitely hard work. I think there's no question about that. Marty, I'm going to head over to you because as another solar market sector that maybe disproportionately took one of the biggest hits that we've seen on the federal side, which is the residential solar sector. I know True North also does commercial, but I'm just curious if you can share what impacts that you're feeling, any customer behavior changes, and really if there's any state policies or regulatory environment that you think helps or could help.
All the things, yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. Oh, where do you start? Right? Last July, big bill comes through, and they made meaningful changes to two different tax credits. One's called the 25D, that's the residential side, and the other one's called 48E, which is the commercial version of the credit. So, yeah, I mean, we've seen the phone has not been ringing nearly as often this year as it was last year at that time. That's a significant data point. I think that is more kind of macroeconomic issues as well as what we experienced in January and February here in Minnesota. You know, that wasn't the topic of conversation at the kitchen table or anywhere. You know, it was all the activity and coming together as a community to support each other. So I think that was probably a big part of it. Another interesting data point is that our close ratios continue to increase. So the folks that do reach out, a higher and higher percentage of them get it, want it, and are moving forward. And that's without a tax credit on the residential side. There's a lot of competition. Some material prices and stuff have come down. Battery prices have come down significantly. But soft costs are becoming more and more competitive in that stack. And that's really troublesome for us. On the permitting and interconnection side, we're still seeing huge delays. We have folks that have been stuck in interconnection queue on a 5 kW backyard system since 2019. I mean, there's hundreds of customers that can't go solar. What that looks like from our standpoint, be honest, who's been through the McDonald's drive-through? Anybody go through the drive-through and realize there's a school bus that just parked, you know, and a bunch of football players just jumped out and the place is packed? I worked at McDonald's as a kid. When you work the drive-through, you get an order, you try to do it, but you got a certain time before that order starts blinking, right? And if you don't get that order out, it starts beeping, right? If you don't get that order out, sirens go off and somebody's on you to get that thing going, right? That's what it looks like in our design kitchen every day. The amount of human power we put in to deal with our interconnection utilities and regulatory folks just to get these projects through is insane. And we've been doing this 16 years. So we have a lot of technical mastery on our team, and we know what we're doing. We've been through it, and we try to lean into that honest handshake from the very beginning. But it's tough under that regulatory environment when you never know what's going to happen. Applying for interconnection now is like jumping into the lottery, and it's really sad to see. Great numbers with everything we see here, but what are we leaving on the table? Seeing that slippage from folks that are investing, cutting checks, wanting to go solar and storage, and then get stopped by the utility. It's a big issue that we're seeing.
Thank you, Marty. And I think for all the policy people who are looking for something to do, I think Marty just gave you something. I'm actually going to turn to the built environment here with Holly and Luke. The built-in sustainable community development is one of my favorite topics. I've been working on the Rice Creek Commons project in Arden Hills. Big news, we just received pre-certification for LEED for Communities on a platinum level, which is one of like 60 in the whole world that have done that. So like, yay for me, yay for our communities. And I like to brag about that because the St. Paul Port Authority created the blueprint that we stole from the Heights. So the Heights did it, really did it first. We're following suit. We took that blueprint. And then, of course, Evergreen Energy has been a core team member in helping us decarbonize our heating footprint, right, across these projects. And so I love it when it all comes together here. And, I want to, so I'm going to turn it to Luke. And Luke, I really just want you to tell us all how it feels to get through 2025 unscathed.
Yeah.
I mean, I say it a little bit in jest, but you are one of the great winners, or geothermal is one of the great winners in 2025, and we're all a little bit jealous. But do you, how did 25 change anything from that perspective for you? Are you seeing with the stability that came along with that, are you seeing differences in your customers or how people are looking to invest in geothermal or geothermal network?
Thanks for putting me on the spot on that, the way that you did. So yeah, just to add to that for folks that maybe are not aware, in the built environment, in the thermal space, which is where Evergreen Energy works, tax credits for geothermal and thermal storage were preserved. And still remain intact today and are driving much of the investments that we're seeing in clean energy technology in the built environment, specifically around thermal energy networks and district energy systems. A little bit about my company, Evergreen Energy, and then I'll jump into I'll provide some more thoughts on the question. Evergreen Energy is a 225-person organization headquartered out of St. Paul. Our mission is to advance and operate district energy systems, thermal energy networks as a trusted partner so campuses and communities can achieve their goals. And those goals are often related to modernization of existing district energy infrastructure, decarbonization of existing or new district energy infrastructure, and then we operate those systems after we work through that process, that advancement process. And so, Tina, to your question, as I look at Evergreen Energy's project pipeline, I see projects that are taking advantage of geothermal heating and cooling technologies. I see projects that are taking advantage of thermal storage technologies, and in general, thermal energy networks, lower temperature networks, networks that provide for efficient use of energy, local renewable energy that exists in the community. That's what we're seeing in our pipeline. And so while we got through the one big beautiful bill unscathed, maybe one additional data point to share with the group on that is, Evergreen Energy with the mission that we provide the campuses and communities that we serve. We saw a lot of interest in these sorts of technologies, and we saw a lot of interest in decarbonization prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, both here in Minnesota and across the country. And we have a number of projects that we're working on and are operating outside of the state of Minnesota. And so I share that to just, to share a little bit of good news perspective. And I don't mean to insinuate in any way that we're anticipating a rollback of geothermal and thermal storage tax credits and direct payments. Crazier things have happened. But I'll say that, for the market segments that we serve, higher education, healthcare, community systems, there are decarbonization commitments, there are institutional commitments that reside within those campuses and communities that were driving a lot of business prior to the Inflation Reduction Act.
Luke, that's great. I think I remember when one big beautiful bill was passed and reviewing it and obviously trying to scour through it from the renewable side, but also what kind of impact would it have on these sustainable communities. And the core component of some of these built-in, particularly Rice Creek Commons, and I can't speak too much to the Heights, but decarbonizing that heating footprint is the key. So if I was stoked to see that that got to stay, because that meant the goals that we had in those communities could still be reached. So it's been, you know, nothing but good things on that front. And then I'll just ask really quick before we turn to Holly, is there anything specific about Minnesota or policies here, regulatory environment here, that you feel is maybe unique, or something that maybe you would like to you see another state doing that you think would be a good idea here?
Sure. So I think Minnesota is quietly emerging as one of the most active states with respect to thermal energy network policy and activity. And, you know, just thinking back on the last 12 months, a few highlights in the thermal energy space from the last 12 months. Department of Commerce recently wrapped up its thermal energy network site suitability study. Department of Commerce has awarded a number of geothermal planning grants to communities across the state that are helping advance geothermal feasibility study, both on a standalone basis and a network geothermal or TENS basis. And in the PUC Thermal Energy Network Deployment Work Group just recently wrapped up its activity, a work group comprised of over 80 stakeholders across 50 organizations. And so I see a lot of momentum around what's happening with the TENS framework that has been established here within the state. And what's exciting and interesting to me about that is we're not starting from scratch here in Minnesota. District heating first came to Minnesota in 1879. Steam was being delivered to buildings in St. Paul at that time before the majority of the country had electricity. And so I'm excited that now, well, I should say, my organization innovated on that infrastructure in a really big way in the 1980s, coming out of the energy crisis in building District Energy St. Paul, and we became a model for the nation. And so I'm excited about what's happening today and the momentum that we as a state are building around thermal energy networks, and thinking about the benefit that they provide in terms of reducing emissions, in terms of managing costs as we do that. To just riff off of a comment that Lisa made around energy productivity, thermal energy networks really are an energy productivity enabler at scale. And so, you know, I think, can we pull some policy ideas in from other states? I think there's some opportunity for that. I also think we're doing a really good job.
Great. Thank you for that. Holly, St. Paul Port Authority is an interesting organization. You get to do a lot of very cool things. You also are very insulated from the federal changes in many ways. And so I'm wondering if you could really talk about how the regulatory environment or policies in Minnesota have really helped support the St. Paul Port Authority and some of these cool endeavors. And, you know, walk us through MinPace and all the important things that you need to have come together to do the things you do.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you for the LEED certification shout out for the Heights as well as geothermal. So I work at the St. Paul Port Authority, and as you said, we do a lot of interesting things. My primary focus is MinPace. So PACE, or also called CPACE in the state of Minnesota, stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. So it's the ability for property owners to finance an energy improvement and pay it back on a voluntary assessment on their tax bill. There's many benefits to this, and people have utilized this since 2010. As far as a state, we are leading the country in small to mid-sized businesses taking advantage of this opportunity. We have over 489 projects across the state. And so the PACE law is provided by the state. So we are insulary to the federal changes. And so we have not been impacted. And I would say that as people are looking for ways to finance their improvements, this is an option on the table that they need to take advantage of. I'd also just like to say that in 2024, the legislature made CPACE much more flexible. There isn't any project that a property owner is doing that shouldn't consider using CPACE as part of the capital stack. Or even if you have a deferred maintenance, a HVAC system that needs to be tackled, this is an opportunity to do it now and take advantage of that. It's often private funding that's financing these PACE projects. And then as the St. Paul Port Authority, we are the program admin. So we are managing those and working with the municipalities, collecting the fees and bringing and sending those fees or sending those payments back to the lenders, the private capital.
Okay, very good. And then actually, I know you guys also work very closely with dealing with financing gaps of certain projects. I'm wondering if you could walk us through a little bit about what that looks like, and how people can learn about how they could do that.
Sure, absolutely. So people often utilize PACE as an alternative to high mezz debt or their own internal capital in a project. And so it's really the ability to get financing at a fixed low interest rate. Some of the other advantages is that the first payment is delayed because we follow the property tax rules. And you can pay it off early if you so choose. And so PACE is a great option to fill that capital stack and be able to finance the project potentially up to 100%. So state law allows you to take out the PACE financing up to 30% of the property's value. And that is also a change that they made at the Minnesota State Legislature in 2024. I mentioned that it's very flexible now. So you no longer have a 1-for-1 SIR, meaning the savings you gain doesn't have to equal the savings of the loan. So you can electrify buildings, like let's do it. And then, they also added resiliency. So we talk about the inflation tax credits going. And believe me, we saw 16 solar projects close last year and a lot of them in Q4. But we can still do batteries. We can do resiliency. We can do climate mitigation. We can do embodied carbon. There's a lot of buzz and a lot of opportunity. And so just be curious and, what is possible? There are options and tools.
Awesome. I'm going to have to ask Kathy again because I said 20 minutes, but I did not see when I started. Are we at 20 minutes? Oh, perfect timing. We didn't get around to some innovation questions. Marty has a really cool story about batteries at his house that you should ask him about, that he shared. Actually, can I just have him share it real quick? Okay, Marty, will you share your storage?
Yeah, the innovation is allowing more and more people to participate in different ways with energy storage. So we oftentimes have solar powered dinners at our house. We have a solar powered oven. It's just an oven, right? It's running off the batteries. And so chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, whatever it might be, is always solar powered. We talk about that with the kids. But what happened Sunday night is I got a note on my phone, hey, there's likelihood for severe storms and things tonight. So this isn't going to be a solar powered dinner. We're saving your battery power for what might happen. And so that's some of the cool communication and things that are coming through. And we didn't lose power, luckily, but that automation is just so cool.
Did you feed your kids that night?
No, we did not feed the kids.
With that, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.
Please stay.
Oh, stay. Stay.
Yes.
Q&A is still good.
During the registration process, we asked you to submit some topics or questions that you had for the panel, so I compiled that list so that hopefully if you're willing to answer some more questions. The first one's actually, I think, pretty fun. If a high school student asked you how to get into the clean energy industry today, what areas would you tell them to keep an eye on? And what part of the industry do you think is going to be the most exciting for their generation? Yeah, Holly.
I just want to jump in because everybody I talk to talks to me about how do I get an energy audit? What is that? How much does it cost? And so I think there's a great opportunity, a need for more people that know how to analyze energy and help people navigate the possibilities for their projects and properties.
Anybody else have thoughts?
I started as an energy auditor, being able to see through the walls, and that was a huge part of it. We always tell folks to start out as an installer, expect to be an installer for a year, learn this from the nuts and bolts level. And those folks that have done that have gone on to do all kinds of things. So that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer by training, so I would suggest science and technology. I'm excited about heat pump innovation, both air source, geothermal, water source, heat pump innovation. And I would encourage high schoolers to learn about those technologies and their applications. There's a lot happening.
Cool. That's great.
Alex, you want to jump in?
Well, my answer might be kind of boring. I would encourage them go talk with their local utility. I spent a lot of time in the muni world earlier in my career, and you know, clean energy requires lines to move, and so and the utility scale side of it, going and learning what that looks like, going and investigating whether or not you want to be on a lineman for a little bit. And then, also moving into the policy side, it's certainly an interesting time. I've gotten more popular at parties. So people, I don't put people to sleep anymore, which is kind of fun. And so I enjoy that.
Good. And I'll just jump in.
Yeah.
I think some of the real hard skill sets is knowing how to use Microsoft Excel very well. I always tell my son that he has to be an electrical engineer so that he can do transmission line electrical work because we are desperate. Okay, my son is 7, so he can do what he wants. I like to tease him a little bit about it, but we are desperate for electrical engineers. MISO is desperate for electrical engineers. Everybody's desperate for them. And right now at this moment, they can call any price they want. So it's a really lovely thing. And the other thing I would say is I think it's storage and knowing all the types of storage, not just lithium ion, but these long duration storage, that will be a game changer for our industry. So those are sort of the 3 things that I always tell people.
That's a great list. So if there's any students in the room or people that work with students, we have options. So we've obviously heard a lot about AI right now. So the people are wondering, beyond the hype, how are you actually using AI to think about things like grid modeling or operational efficiency, site selection? Really, how is it actually working in your businesses today? Luke.
I'll maybe go a slightly different direction with
Yeah.
that and talk about data centers briefly from a thermal energy perspective. Data centers, development is being driven primarily by AI, as we've talked about. That's leading to significant load growth. Data centers are getting bigger, they're getting hotter, and in some cases getting closer to buildings. And that presents opportunity for heat reuse. That's something that we don't do very well here in the United States. It's being done well elsewhere, particularly in the Nordics. Some quick perspective, 100 megawatt data center paired with a thermal energy network. There's enough recoverable heat from that data center to heat 12,000 homes in the state of Minnesota. And it's cold here, as a reminder. So that presents a lot of opportunity. And at Evergreen, we're encouraging data center developers to look for those opportunities to offer heat to communities. We're encouraging communities to ask for heat, to ask for thermal energy networks, and we're encouraging policymakers to think about opportunities to make that relationship work.
That's great.
I'll tell you how we're not going to use AI. We're going to answer the phone with a human, and we're committed to that because in the sales and marketing, thank you, yeah, didn't take much, right? No, there's so much in the sales and marketing world that these texts, these automated emails, all these things coming through. And of course, there's the efficiencies on the administrative side and lower some soft costs. In fact, we've been paying, tens of thousands of dollars for CRMs every year. Now we can just go out and build our own in a week, So there's opportunities for AI to lower the soft costs from a business administration standpoint. But from the business development side of things, we're leaning into the human approach because we firmly believe that all this AI stuff is going to water down the meaningful interactions we have. And if we stay true to that, we'll stay at the top. It's really hard to build that trust and confidence in a community using AI bots anyway. So it's more fun this way.
Yeah, I would actually echo that. We use Microsoft. We've got Copilot built in on some things. Some efficiencies there. It helps you prep for meetings a little bit quicker. But we certainly, as a company, have working in the development space moved much more towards human to human interactions in a way that we have not seen at the same scale before. So the AI system, the ecosystem requires infrastructure, and infrastructure, and divorcing that from infrastructure, because there's a lot of things to that infrastructure supplies that's not just AI. We've had data centers in Minnesota since the 70s. I think there was a data center group I was with yesterday. They formed in the 1990s. There's their chapter here, and that organization itself is from the 1980s in AFCOM. It was a wonderful group, by the way. I recommend people should go there. But a lot of the conversations that we had were more along the lines of what's the pipeline for technicians look like in that industry? How can we train them up at Hennepin Tech, the community college? When we're out in the communities, we're having a lot more coffee chats than we have before. We're spending a lot more time in person. I think there's an opportunity here to really increase meaningfully human-to-human interactions and not use call centers to do robocalls, right? So that's something that is actually, I think, for us, we're excited about as a company. We're back in the office these days. We're increasing our touch points. Copilot still gets us through the day a little bit more efficiently, but I don't think that it is significantly. It's actually requiring us to spend more in-person time than less.
Any last thoughts? No? Okay, no problem. So this actually looks a little higher than Minnesota, but there was a question between global trade shifts and the push for made in America parts. How are you handling the supply chain right now? And is there anything that's actually getting easier to source locally here from Minnesota?
So our modules come from Q cells, and they've been manufactured in Georgia, state of Georgia, since 2019. So 99% of our panels, our inverters are manufactured in Florida and Texas, and our racking comes from Ohio, Indiana, New Mexico. Some are, I think, still extruded up in Alexandria, Minnesota. So it just really in term one, I don't know how to say it, his first term, following that, there is a lot of onshoring of manufacturing, and that's pretty mature right now. So easy to talk about, and it's welcomed. With the loss of the 25D tax credit and no domestic content bonus for residential, we are seeing some more foreign materials trying to come in and undercut price a lot. But it's very early stages. We're talking just in the last several weeks and months, you see more players coming in trying to drive that price down. We're pretty leery of it.
I think that's similar to what we've seen on the utility scale side. It's been a very tough trade environment over the last year for us. The one big beautiful bill changed meaningfully 48E, which is a tax credit that we rely on very heavily, and it put a foreign entity of concern restriction in there from a material sourcing standpoint, and restrictions on effective control being given over to what associated with licenses from a number of foreign entities of concern and adversary countries. It's been really hard to navigate between that and 232 investigations from the U.S. Department of Commerce and anti-dumping, countervailing, or CVD cases. One of the things that has been, though, a little bit of a bright spot and has been exciting is the increased manufacturing for domestic components in the storage industry specifically that's ramping up onshore. A lot of the processing of some of these minerals, significant portions of processing of a lot of these minerals happens in China. But having the actual components manufactured in the United States and seeing that really ramp up in a significantly meaningful way is exciting to shore up the supply chain for that, and a little bit of a bright spot.
I would just add that maybe we should go back to the high school question. Procurement specialists. What we're dealing with is extraordinarily nuanced and challenging in a way that is like it takes everybody's brain power. Like one person can't figure it out in your company. You need everybody on board. So supply chain management is key, absolutely key to the renewable or to the solar industry. I mean, I'm sure to the wind and storage is a little bit different beast because the ITC kind of is a little bit longer out, but the FIAC issues are real. We don't have all the rules yet, which also makes it really hard to price any projects. And then, of course, you can be domestic content, but not FIAC compliant. You can be FIAC compliant, but not domestic content. So it's just, it gets really complicated really fast. And so I actually foresee this as being one of the top things that this industry is just going to deal with for years to come and manage how we're going to meet these very complex requirements. And like, fingers crossed, it doesn't get more complex through new policy set.
All right, we have made it to the end. Thank you, panelists. Give them a round of applause. On behalf of everyone at SEAM, I want to thank you all for coming and spending your morning with us. It's always a great time to be able to chat through some of the exciting work over the last year and what might be to come and hear how it's applying to our on-the-ground industry partners. So this year in particular, I just want to do a really quick shout out to SEAM. We're turning 10 as an organization. So for the last decade, yeah. So for the last decade, we've been working to strengthen the business voice for the clean energy transition here in Minnesota, and it's clear that it's working. And we have a lot of progress that we've done and a lot more to go. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 10 years. But we have the room for about 10 minutes, so not that long. But if you want to network with your fellow business leaders here, we always love to see it. And we'll be in touch with the recording so that if there's any facts that you want to see, there's time. There's also fact books available in the back on your way out if you want to get the full report. So thanks for coming.